So this forum is for introducing the candidates of office of the 1st Congressional District. My name's Lori Simpson, and I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Plumas County. I'm also a county supervisor, and I represent District 4, which is Quincy. And I've sat on this side of the table before myself. So the League of Women Voters have been sponsoring election forums for 26 years. And part of our mission is to engage public in democratic processes. Now we have some tables, we have voter registration forms and some information on ballot initiatives at the state level, which the league, which ones they support or oppose. And we have some league brochures are in that back corner. I want everybody to remove any campaign stuff that you have on you. I don't see any. Okay. Supervisor Jim, will you remove your hat or?
This has nothing to do with the congressional race.
Okay, well, anyway, we do have Audrey Denney's table and we do have Doug LaMalfa's materials back there. Everybody turn your cell phones off. The bathrooms are over there. And let me see here. So the League of Women Voters of Plumas County is a nonpartisan organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose any political party or candidate for office. We do, however, act on selected governmental issues in the public interest. The League of Women Voters was formed in Plumas County in 1993. Nationally, the League was founded in 1920 as a result of the campaign to give women the right to vote. The League is open to all men and women of the voting age. And let's see, what else do we do? We do sponsor an annual essay contest for Plumas County students in grades 9 to 12. The essay topic encourages young adults to engage in political debate and better understand our democratic process. Now, we do have our league members here that have helped us so much to set this up. Kathy Felker, where are you? Kathy? Yay, Kathy. Nance Reed. She's going to be our timer. Sharon Taschenberg. Where is Sharon? Okay. And we do have men in our group. John Cunningham is here. Ronnie Java. Ronnie. Okay. And Joe Childers, her husband's here somewhere. Okay. He's going to put all the chairs away when we're done. Ruth Jackson's here, long. She hurried back to come here. And I saw Dale Russell. She recently joined. Okay. Also, I'm going to recognize a couple electeds in the room. My fellow supervisor for Plumas County, Jeff Ingalls, here, over there. Okay. And we're going to ask you to hold applause until the very end of the forum. I forgot to mention that. I'm still going through the rules. And we have Sierra County Supervisor Jim Beard is here. Any other electeds? We have I see former Supervisor John Kennedy, District 5 is here. I had to get you in. So any other supervisors, okay, or electeds? Okay. So I'm going to explain the format here. So we're going to hold the applause till the end. And we want civil discourse. It's lacking in our society. It's lacking everywhere. So I ask that you refrain from clapping, cheering, moaning, and groaning. Just hold it, till you get outside. And what you're going to do is you're going to hear these two people, and I'm going to tell you, it takes guts to run for office. Put yourself out there and run for office. And so you're going to hear the issues, and then you're going to go vote. That's all you're going to do. You're going to hear the issues, and then you're going to vote later when that time comes. So what we're going to do, excuse me, I haven't done this for a while, but all our experienced moderators took a vacation. Yeah, so, okay. I'm used to chairing controversial meetings, and I do a good job, right, Supervisor Engel?
I'm sure we can kick up a fuss if you want.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have opening statements, and then we'll have closing statements. You have submitted cards. All the questions will be on cards, and we have big piles. We're not going to be able to answer every question. A lot are just issues like health care, immigration, forest management. So they're all lumped together. We do screen them for liability, not liability. How do you say that word? Libel. Okay. Sorry. I am who I am. You're seeing it, yeah. Okay, so when we do ask that the questions are going to both candidates so they can both answer and you can compare them, that way one person doesn't get all the questions and the other one doesn't. So we're going to try to aim it so both can answer. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question. And let's see, and then we have our timer of their Nance. We'll give signals. Oh, I wanted to introduce, this has been very heavily, a lot of interest, and my name was a contact. So for the last week, I've just had all kinds of inquiries. But we do have our press here and our distinguished editors. We have Deborah Moore from Feather Publishing. We have Dawn Russell from the Mountain Messenger. Oh, okay, let's not clap, everybody, please. And we have people here who are going to Facebook Live, and I thank you very much because that was a request. We have people here from Brian Hamilton, who's the editor of the Union of Grass Valley, and his staff writer, Alan Rickwilmy. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to introduce those, and thank you for coming. The Fourth Estate is one of our greatest things in our country, and I'm thankful for the Fourth Estate, even though I cringe sometimes when I have to read about me. So anyway, so let's get going. We're going to begin, and we had a drawing, and Audrey's going to go first. No, Doug's going first. Okay, Doug, why don't you go ahead and give your opening statement for 3 minutes. And be careful, don't stand next to that.
All right. Okay, very good. Well, Lori, Supervisor Simpson, we're on a Lori-Doug basis, so you're a good friend. Thank you for what it took to field all those calls and make this happen here tonight. Thank you to the League, all of you that are dedicated to doing this. It's a great format and a great opportunity to get out and do what we do at this time of year. 50 days to go. thank you all for showing up here and for taking your time to do that civic duty. And I guess we're not too worried about Monday Night Football right now. So anyway, good to have you here. Good to be with you here in Plumas County. I'm proud to represent the 1st District, and our family has longtime ties to Plumas County as well. I live in Butte County down by Oroville, where we grew up and went to school there. So, you know, I think I have a record. I've been around. You know pretty much what I'm about. So tonight I hope we can focus on the Q&A that will help further define some of the things that we don't always have that chance to interact with. And so bottom line, it comes down to how is it that we as America, as a country, here in the state of California in the 1st District, how are we going to prosper? How are we going to have the same opportunities for the next generations as we've had, and those before me and my generation, our generation, have had too. This used to be a really thriving place, strong industries, and the support that came from that to help you have a thriving local government. And I know that's been a struggle for many years now. I sit as a member of the Natural Resources Committee, as well as the Ag Committee and the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. I asked to be on those 3 committees in order to exercise my ability, my time, to get the things done that we can get done for our district and for our state. Those 3 committees, I think, are very key to this rural district we have here and the infrastructure and the things we need to get done. So with that, I've never believed that a central government in Washington, D.C. is the answer to all of our problems. I believe that most problems, the solutions come from the innovation, the ideas, the things that the American people have always done over the years. When they have an idea, when they get a patent, when they take it to market, when they open a small business, whatever that is, that's what has made us strong, as was made us thrive. When the push from the east to the west, the settling of the west, the settling of the whole country, that came from people's pioneer spirit. And that's still alive here in Plumas, Sierra County. How many of y'all from Sierra County? How many made the trek over? Very good. How many from Plumas County? Good. And you probably a few from Nevada County too as well, huh? All right, very good. So, pardon? Placer. Placer, wow, okay. Maybe long distance travel. Okay, well with that, let's have a great discussion here tonight. But I'm about serving the people directly and the decisions being made home by you, by your local governments, and not a centralized government in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Well, good evening. What an amazing, amazing crowd here today. It's so wonderful to see so many bright faces, and thank you to the League for putting this on. So I want to make a promise to you tonight, to those of you sitting in this room and those of you watching online, that as your representative, I will only be accountable to you. We've got complex problems and intertwined problems that we're facing here in this district. I was in Greenville a few months ago, and I met a business owner who got the last internet port in downtown Greenville. And so for the past 18 months, there haven't been able to be new businesses in downtown that could connect to the internet. I've talked to farmers in Butte County and Glenn County who are unsure of what their crop insurance payments are going to be, who are unsure if they're going to have funding for conservation programs because we don't have a new farm bill yet. And Congress has 2 weeks to get that done before the current legislation expires. Right? I've talked to people in every single county of the district who are stressed out about increasing prescription drug costs and insurance premiums that are spiraling out of control. Folks, these are complex problems, and they have to be handled head on by a leader who is not in the pocket of corporate interests. How can we expect the congressman to hold telecom companies accountable for providing rural broadband to every single member, every single person in our district, if he takes donations from AT&T and Comcast? How can we expect the congressman to make fair farm policy decisions that represent the interests of the 1st District when he's taking contributions from 10 different sugarcane packs? How can we expect the congressman to make sure that our health care is more affordable when he's taking contributions from healthcare insurance companies and pharma? Folks, it is time across our beautiful nation that we elect a new generation of leaders that is not bought and paid for by special interests. As your Congresswoman, I won't have the answer. I won't come to you with the answer of every single problem that we face, because they're complex. And solutions shouldn't be handled down from the federal government. They should come from you, the community leaders that are experts in your areas and your issues. What we need is a representative who will walk alongside our communities, who will act as a partner, and who will make sure that our solutions get implemented in Congress. That leader can't be in the pocket of corporate interests. I have taken a pledge not to take a dime of corporate PAC money, because I believe that corporations aren't people, and I believe that money isn't speech. I am Audrey Denny. I'm an educator, I'm a farmer, and it will be the honor of my life to be your representative. And I get the first question, so I stay standing, right? I learned a little something yesterday.
Well, we're not going to be able to answer any questions, but they're all in categories. But it's the big pile is health care, protecting people with existing medical conditions. Do you support universal health care, Medicare for all, and people want to keep their affordable health care? Explain your position, please.
So healthcare. So healthcare is the question, and this issue could not be more timely. A lot for me personally. A lot of you know that just over 3 weeks ago, I had massive abdominal surgery to remove a tumor the size of a football on my left ovary. Congressional elections, not a great time for a cancer scare. Let me tell you what, I was equally terrified that I had cancer as I was that I was going to go bankrupt because of this. Folks, two-thirds of the bankruptcies in our nation are medical in nature. And almost every single person in this room is one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. The congressman has voted to cut Medicaid, which 1/3 of our district relies on. He's voted to decrease the funding to some of our critical access providers, including primary and specialty care. And Republicans in Congress have completely attacked our insurance markets to make our premiums go up and up and up. Send me to Washington, and the very first thing I will do is be part of a solution working for healthcare at a federal level, but also here in our rural district, right? We've got to be working towards a system where everyone is covered, where it's affordable, and where people aren't afraid to go to the doctor. Medicare, right now, is a federally funded program for our seniors 65 and older. A lot of you folks in here have Medicare. I'd love to explore the option of what it looks like when we can expand that to more populations. But we also have a lot of unique challenges because of our rural nature, where we live up here. We've got to make sure that we're investing in our federally qualified healthcare centers. We got to make sure that we're addressing the fact that we are a health professional shortage area by stopping to attack the critical access providers that are providing us our care, but also working to attract new doctors and nurses to our beautiful area.
Would you rephrase that question a little bit? It was kind of a couple different tiers there, would you? Okay, thank you. Or restated it, please.
Okay, will you explain your position on universal health care? I
oppose government-run, single-payer universal health care.
Okay. So that means that's your position on Medicare for all. And then how about people with existing health care conditions? How are you going to protect them? And those were the ones pretty much
Okay. All right, we'll launch into that. Okay, well, certainly what we have to do is make health care more affordable and the insurance that people choose more affordable. Unfortunately, with what's called the Affordable Care Act, it did neither one of those. Costs of insurance went up for people that could afford it, and for those that could not afford it, they soon found themselves paying a penalty for not being able to afford it or buy it. In the United States of America, we have what? Choices, or the government compelling you to buy something that you really had little choice over and penalizing you if you didn't do it. What kind of a situation is that? What would the founders say about that? So what we've tried to do as Republicans, but as Congress, I mean, I would hope for bipartisan effort on this, because the bottom line, when people have more choices, when they have more competition for who's going to get your health care dollars, but more importantly, provide you a health care service, more competition, more choices is better for everybody. And we find that with the Affordable Care Act, that people, especially in rural California and rural America, have had less choices, less plans available to them. Again, that's really un-American. And so what do? We need to address the cost of delivering health care. We need to address the cost of what it takes for a doctor or a clinic to run their office so that they can deliver more. But what our efforts have been through the American Health Care Act was to give those choices, to have less government entanglement, and more of it be coming from the lesser cost of insurance. What people need is to be able to buy basic insurance policies. And what's good is everybody is responsible for having their own. If they can't have that, we're going to have that safety net. What the problem was with the ACA was that 85% of the people were more or less happy with the health insurance they had. I mean, we'd still need to do more to drive the cost down. Again, less litigation, less high cost of doing business with doctors, and help take care of the 15% with a successful Medicaid program, et cetera. Thank you.
There was a couple questions about cutting Social Security. Can you talk about that?
Certainly. Now, there's been rumors abounding that because of different things that have gotten through the Jobs and Tax Reform Act, oh, that's going to mean we're going to cut Social Security. Well, that's created by organizations that want to put that word out and put that vibe out on the internet or wherever that this is the only way they're going to pay for it. It's the only way that they can have people keep more money in your pocket is by cutting Medicare or Social Security. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Actually, there's a source, Snopes, that has checked that out, and Snopes isn't known to be the most conservative-leaning organization out there, that said that is indeed false, that the Tax Reform Act would do anything, or any of the other measures we've put through, to cut Social Security. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do? Well, first of all, the promise has been made, and the promise I will help keep is that for those that are already in Social Security or near it, nothing's going to change. But looking longer term, when sometime in the 2030s, we expect it to really go upside down, then we better be thinking ahead on how we're going to address. And again, when we start having these discussions, we need to have a true... Okay, I'll choke up on that a little better. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. When we have these discussions, we need to not have, the sky is falling, they're talking about whacking Social Security. Indeed, what are we going to do to make it sustain longer term after some time in the 2030s? Because we have less people paying in and more people that are drawing upon that. And you know how things like that go if the dollars aren't there for the people paying in. So we got to make sure that we have sustainable level of what people are drawing out and the people that are paying in. And the younger generation, if you ask them, if you poll them, I've talked to a lot, they don't believe it'll ever be there for them anyway. That's a pretty sad, cynical position for young people, that they know they're going to be paying into that unless they're one of the exempt groups that doesn't pay into the system, that they know it won't be there for them. So we have to make that sustainable long term, and we have to be able to have an honest discussion, bipartisan one, when that time comes around, and it needs to be soon.
So the chair of the National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee, in an interview with CNBC, said that the size of the national deficit was so intense that in order to balance the budget, they would have to cut social programs. And when pushed, he said that included Social Security and Medicare. And this June, there was a budget proposal that went to the House Budget Committee that did just that. Folks, it is no surprise to anyone in here that because of the tax cuts to the wealthiest people in this country, our social programs, our social safety nets will suffer. And it's my core belief. This one gets me fired up a little bit, because it is my core belief that we as Americans have a duty to protect the most vulnerable among us. And I am looking at a room that is full of the most vulnerable among us. Social Security has decreased elder poverty from 35% to 10%, and a quarter of the people who live in our district depend on it. We get $225,000 a month in Social Security benefits that are invested right back into our economy. As a young person, like the Congressman mentioned, I'm terrified that when I'm your age, there won't be a solvent Social Security fund. Under the current plan, under the current where we're at right now, it'll be solvent until 2037. But if we remove the Social Security cap and make sure the top 1% is paying their fair share into the system, it'll be solvent for a lot longer than that. But this is only part of the problem, right? Social Security Administration's budget has been slashed, and over the past 5 years, we've lost 4,000 jobs in the Social Security Administration nationwide. In Reading alone, we've got 14 open seats. And those are the people that are connecting you, the seniors, with your benefits. You should have real people you get to go to talk to when you go into a Social Security office that says, hey, this is what you qualify for. Let's make sure you get the most so you can live and retire in dignity. What's my next question? I want to answer all the questions.
Next question is about climate change. What should we do about climate change? We've had fires, floods, green technology. Should we create incentives to develop green technology or revive the coal industry? These are just different questions here.
What should we do about climate change?
Yeah, it's all about climate change.
That's the question I'm going to answer. What should we do about
and
climate
global
change?
warming.
Okay.
Oh, here's one I want to add. What science-based information do you use to inform your position regarding global warming? So
Cool.
all those together.
In 2 minutes. All right, folks, looking around what's happening even this summer with the hurricane, with the car fires, it's no surprise, it should be no surprise that human-induced climate change is already here. We can't grow cherries in Butte County anymore because we don't have the same chill hours. This is an issue that's really, really close to my heart because I've spent a good part of my career working on mitigating climate change. Whether that was developing tools to help policymakers around the world lower their greenhouse gas emissions, or whether it was when I was teaching at Chico State talking to students about how to reduce food waste. I've been working on this issue even in developing countries like El Salvador and Ghana, working with smallholder farmers to make climate resilient agriculture strategies. So this is something that's really close to my heart. And going forward as a nation, we absolutely have to have a plan in place to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. We have to be investing in renewable energy and renewable fuels. Here in California, our cap and trade program has shown that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions while having a really robust economy, right? California's economy is the 5th largest in the world. And every single year, we get between $2.5 and $5 billion from that program to invest in greenhouse gas reduction strategies. But reducing greenhouse gas emissions isn't enough. Even if we stopped using all fossil fuels today, in the next 100 years, it is likely that we would still see massive climatic changes. So we need to be implementing a federal policy to help draw down atmospheric carbon and store it in the soil. And folks, this is a win-win. We can do something at the federal level like the Healthy Soils Initiative here in California, which helps incentivize farmers and ranchers to use some of these agricultural practices that a lot like we're doing already, cover crops, rotational grazing, that all keep soil carbon in the soil. And that's my time. Let's talk more about that later.
Well, thank you. We're going to call it climate change or global warming. I guess the title doesn't matter so much as what action is either being taken or what is forced upon the people. And doggone it, every government solution I hear ends up being taxing the people in some fashion or another, whether it's the cap and trade tax, tax on fuel, tax on this or that or whatever, that ends up costing the people. There's no free lunch here. It always gets passed to you. and that ends up in government coffers in Sacramento so they can pursue things like a $100 billion high-speed rail boondoggle, which, interestingly enough, as they're building it, they're concerned that they're going to make greenhouse gases or running the equipment to do it. So they said they would plant trees to offset the equipment doing that. Yet at the same time, they're running the high-speed rail through almond orchards all up and down the valley, taking the trees out. So I'm not quite sure where they're going with all this. So I know that for people of California, they're told high-speed rail is going to do so much to help greenhouse gases, but it tripled in price. At what point does someone look out for what the taxpayers are paying for these dreams that others are having in the bureaucracy? So what do we do instead? We're the country that always innovates how to do things better, cleaner, more efficiently. We have the cleanest running automobiles we've ever had. Our power plants, and I appreciate Ms. Denny's comment there. Even if we shut down all fossil fuel use, it isn't going to change anything. So maybe this is a little bit bigger than mankind. It has a lot to do with nature and the different parts of what happens with the effects on the planet by what nature does. So they used to grow vineyards in Greenland years ago. So these things tend to be cyclical. But there's no reason we can't always advance technology to do things better and cleaner. United States of America leads the way in doing that. Cleanest cars, cleanest power plants. But at the same time, why do we need to shut down our economy in this country, export those jobs, and export to dirtier technology countries? Let's do it here. We need these jobs, and for crying out loud, the forestry, if we had better forestry practices, we wouldn't be putting so much carbon in the air. Instead, we could be putting it on your table as a piece of paper or a new baseball bat or a wood product and put the jobs locally. I better stop. Thank you. I might be up now. Okay.
Okay, our next questions are regarding immigration. What are your policies regarding true immigration reform? California has passed sanctuary state and sanctuary city laws. How should Congress respond to sanctuary city policies? And I'm going to add, what's your feeling about separating children and parents at the border, seeking asylum? And I think those all go together.
Okay, you'll have to help me with walking through that. But the bottom line is that if we're going to have a sovereign, secure nation, we need to have a secure border, because no other program beyond that will work. If you want to do amnesty, if you want to have forgiveness for this group that comes in illegally, then the next group comes. If you don't have a border. That said, we're a welcoming country. We welcome, key word here, legal immigration, legal immigrants. We always hear this. It kind of morphed into the word just immigrants in the media, immigrants on the left. And there's a distinction between people that want to play by the rules and stand in line. I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to people in farm labor. Now you would think, all right, farm laborers, they tend to be the folks that are not here legally? A lot. But that said, they want to have a legal system. We've sat down with them because many of them worked hard to get here. Many of them have gone through the process to have a legal work permit and all that. So let's reward that. And as we go through the immigration reform, and we're having some battles with this back in DC. It isn't just about closing the border. Nobody wants a closed border. We're going to have a secure system of whether it's a fence, whether it's a wall, whether it's other technology, more patrols. That's good. But we also have gates with well-oiled hinges where we welcome people in to say, we want you to come work here. We want you to immigrate here. We want you to have a student visa, to whatever it is that helps make America better. And that's a thing. Thank you. And that's a big part of the immigration reform. What was the last piece? You had... Oh, okay, the separation thing. All right. Now, refugees generally are folks that are coming from a very oppressed country that are in danger. We see that in the Middle East. It seems as though the wrong people are being labeled by the United Nations as the refugees. Instead, we want to be helping the folks that are being persecuted. So what we're talking about at the border here is that there's been a rush on the border that has made it almost impossible to accomplish the things like we're talking about the separation here. Well, what we have is that people are making a choice when they come here illegally, and that is a big part of the issue of why the separation happens. But they're trying to accommodate. Anyway, I better stop. Thank you.
So I wanna
Everybody, I want quiet while these people are talking. If you want to make comments, please leave the room.
That's really important to Representative LaMalfa and I as well, that we remain civil, so thank you for that. But the immigration system, folks, is complex. And we have been trying to make bipartisan progress on this since George W. Bush was in office. And you're absolutely right. With sanctuary, our state laws are out of alignment with our local laws, out of alignment with our national laws, and that's causing massive disarray. And that's what we're seeing on the southern border. I believe that we need a secure border, but I believe building $1 billion wall is a ludicrous idea because the situation is so much more complex than that. And we have to understand the demographics of people who are crossing the southern border. It's not what we were seeing 10, 15 years ago. It's not a single man looking for economic opportunity. We're seeing women, we're seeing children, we're seeing unaccompanied minors who are crossing the border because they fear for their lives in their home countries. El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras are 3 of the most dangerous countries with 3 of the highest homicide rates per capita in the world, right? So we're seeing different demographic shifts. And the thought of putting children in prisons, folks, that doesn't make any of us in this room feel safer or feel more American. What we need to do is bring everyone to the table. We need comprehensive bipartisan immigration reform that secures our border, also providing agriculture worker protection, also providing refugee status for those who've earned it, also protecting our immigrants who work and live in our country, who have been here for years and years, who are law-abiding citizens. Folks, Representative LaMalfa had almost a decade in the state legislature to address this. He's had 3 terms in Congress, and he's been part of the problem and not part of the solution. I have lived experience with these issues. I was the president of the board of an international human rights organization based in Central America. Send me to Washington and let me take a hack at it. No clapping, for reals. Okay. Lori will get mad.
Yeah. Okay, these questions are about, wait a minute here. It's about divisiveness in our government. What will you do to work towards better bipartisan legislation? Why can't members of Congress consider voting on issues based on the issue merits instead of along party lines? There's just about the divisiveness here of our government at the federal level, at the other levels, not at the local level. I am very concerned about the lack of decency in this political era. So just about the lack of civility and the partisanship, just address that.
Thank you for the pile of people who wrote this question, because this is one of my driving forces. My very core belief as a human that's been shaped by my Christian faith perspective and shaped by my human rights work is that every single person is inherently equal in worth and rights and dignity. And when you send me to Congress, I will represent all of you. My generation, I know a lot of the millennials in this room are ready to move beyond party politics. We're tired of labels. I was a Republican, registered Republican for 10 years. I've been a Democrat since. And I find myself looking at issues not from a partisan lens, but from a lens of how will this benefit the people in my district? Our Congress right now is one of the most historically gridlocked Congresses in the history of the Republic. 1,800 amendments have been blocked. They haven't been able to be considered because this is the most closed Congress in history. Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts is currently working on some changes of rules in the Rules Committee that would allow it to be a more open, more transparent process. But I really, really look forward to being not only accessible to my constituents, so I know I've got my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the district, but I look forward to going back to Washington, D.C., and hopefully working with a new generation of leaders who can say, hey, This is where I'm coming from. This is my angle. What's your angle? What do you want out of this? And where's that shared common ground in the middle? Right? Where are the parts on this issue that we both agree? That is how we make productive and honest and honorable compromise, and that art has been lost in our Congress.
Well, you know, we don't get credit for the bipartisan work that does happen in Congress. I'm constantly working across the aisle with my California colleagues or others, one colleague from Illinois on an agricultural issue. And just recently I got a petition signed by all 53 members of the House delegation, Democrats and Republicans, to advance a small cause, but an important one. So, you know, that isn't what's reported, because that's not what's exciting to put on the news. So we hear about the fighting and battling, and indeed, it is intense. And what is sad is the lack of civility here. And what you don't see me doing is making those fiery speeches, knocking people by party or knocking people personally like that. You know, I get it myself, but, you know, it's a tough business, right? So, you know, I don't have anything bad to say about Miss Denny here. She had a couple shots at me last night and today, but, you know, that's all right. I don't take corporate money because it's been illegal. Hey. It's I don't take corporate money because it's been illegal since about 2001 to do so. So, you know, that's kind of a misnomer. And as far as other things, I've been working right in the thick of it on immigration and many other things. So, you know, civility is something that if everybody practices, it will be there. And so, and I appreciate about the league's format here tonight, because we're trying to keep it cool in this room here. It's different sometimes out on town halls, but we'll discuss that at a different time. So that said, you accomplish a lot more when you find a way to collaborate, find common ground, and do so. And that's what my goal is. I'm back there not because it's great to walk around in a suit and tie in Washington, D.C., but I have goals, things I want to accomplish, things I want to accommodate for our district. Again, prosperity for our district, prosperity for people in places that struggle, like the eastern part of California, whose jobs have disappeared due to a lot of timber jobs and mining jobs and a lot of resource jobs leaving. I want your kids and you to have the opportunity to remain here and prosper, because you live here for a reason. You had the pioneer spirit. I don't look at you folks as victims. I look at you folks as the pioneers that want to keep things going. You came here for that reason. Thank you.
Hello. Now we're going on to the topic of gun control, school shootings. Do either of you have a relationship with the National Rifle Association? Will you address the gun issue, and how do we reach common ground on gun control?
The common ground is that it's guaranteed in the Second Amendment. I've had an A and A+ rating my entire career by the NRA. I'm proud of that, because this is a cornerstone issue of the founding of our country. So if people have the right to defend themselves by having arms, it's not a matter of somebody arbitrarily deciding what type of arm is it, what does it look like. It comes down to the choice, okay? And there's a lot of misnomers made about that too with automatic weapons. Automatic weapons have been banned since 1934 for private use and ownership, unless, you know, with strict exceptions, and it was further bolstered, I think, in 1986. So what we're talking about is the right to use them for, whether it's sporting, for hunting, but it isn't just for those. It also is for self-defense. And I shudder to think what people, especially in rural areas like this, that not having that option as you travel these long distances, whether it's defending yourself from people that are up here causing the drug trade, you know, MS-13 and others that are bringing that horrible stuff into this area with more and more proliferation of illegal marijuana grows that are hurting our federal lands and private lands, our forests, with all the chemicals and the bad attitude they bring with that. People need to have that right for self-protection, because as great a sheriff and great a job as Sheriff Hagwood and your law enforcement does, they can't be everywhere. So this is a personal choice. You don't have to do it. As far as the schools, we passed legislation recently to give them more tools for that, to secure their schools and to harden those schools for that extreme need. We had happen in Rancho Tehama just a few months ago, a guy on a rampage there. And thankfully, one of the ladies working in the office was able to get there and close the gate and secure the place just enough to hold him off. and push them another direction. Had there been somebody around armed, that guy would have been stopped right away. And that's what we need, is people that choose to participate can do so. But legislation Congress passed is going to help, and you're going to see the fruits of that upcoming with being able to protect our schools better.
So I grew up on a farm and with a family that safely and responsibly used firearms, and I am a gun owner myself. And I know living out here in the rural areas, a lot of us respect and understand the need for farmers and ranchers and sports enthusiasts to have firearms. But the fact of the matter is, gun owner or not, nobody wants innocent lives taken at the hands of guns, right? And so there is a lot that we can do on a federal level to make our kids safer at school. In California, since between 1993 and 2016, we've seen gun violence death rates drop by 56%. In the rest of the nation at that same time, it was 16%. Right? So we're doing something right here. But we need to make sure that we're doing something at a federal level to keep all of our kids safe until other states will bring up their gun safety legislation. A couple of pieces of low-hanging fruit that there's political will for in Congress right now. Getting truly universal background checks, right? Bringing alcohol, tobacco, and firearms up into the 21st century and letting them use computers. Closing the gun show loophole. Banning bump stocks and binary triggers that let semi-automatic weapons function as automatic weapons, right? Expanding gun violence protection orders, where if I have a family member who owns a gun and I am worried that that person is a danger to himself, that I can get a judge to temporarily take those guns away until the issue is solved, right? These are all reasonable things that will keep our kids safer at school. And it's just one of the most poignant moments that I've had on the campaign trail was a woman who was a teacher in Chico talking to me at a farmer's market. And she came up to me crying, and she said, "Audrey, I'm afraid to go to work every day. And I don't want that to be the America that I live in."
These questions are, again, directed at both of you. You both say you're farmers, and where do you farm? How much do you farm? Do you support farm subsidies? Let's see. What's the biggest threat to rangeland? And, well, that might be a little different one. But just about agriculture and your background and your experience in agriculture.
Great question. So I grew up on a family farm in southern Monterey County. We had beef cows, and my dad was one of the first guys to plant wine grapes down there. We also had draft horses. It was an amazing way to grow up. I was active in the 4-H and the FFA for a long time. I was a state officer for the FFA. And because of that experience, I was like, I know I'm going to be a high school ag teacher, because it changed my life. Right? And so I came up to Chico State and studied agriculture education, and then I taught agriculture at the university, and I've worked in agriculture development in both El Salvador and Ghana. If I'm talking to any farmers in the room, this is going to make your heart hurt a little bit, but we lost the family farm in 2010. I was just talking to Rep. LaMalfa about that before we got started. And since then, I started my own production ag business. It's a farm management business. My dad's my only employee, and we manage 300 acres. 85 of them are planted to grapes down in southern Monterey County. So I get to do all the books and check on him when he's down there. But it's just enough to keep him out of trouble. And oh man, he's probably watching this. Dang it, sorry Dad, you're amazing. You would never get in trouble. Oh, always busted. And then I think the other question was farm subsidies, and I absolutely believe that our crop insurance programs and our risk management programs are important to stabilize our agriculture markets that are so important for domestic security. I commend, the congressman's family. I know this is a big topic, has utilized those crop insurance programs, and I support his right, his work to do that. And when you send me to Congress, I'm going to make sure that those programs, those crop insurance programs, are made available and made to all all of our farmers, our small and mid-sized farmers, and our specialty crops have been historically underrepresented in the Farm Bill, so I'll fight for that, as well as the 9 other really important titles in the Farm Bill, including conservation, beginning farmers and ranchers support, nutrition assistance, all of those things that really make our Farm Bill important and so crucial. I will be fighting for you that way.
Well, yeah, we have a long history. My family is farming, or we've been since 87 years on one branch of the family on the area we farm now, and about 105 on a different branch of the family, all in that Butte County area. We've always pretty much grown rice, but we've dabbled in other crops. Wild rice for a while. We grow tame rice. We just stick to the tame rice, okay? So a little bit of corn, a little bit of wheat, but rice is what grows best in that area. And yes, it's a program crop, and we participate as a family in the program like thousands of others, people in rice and corn and soybeans and like that. If you don't participate, for a lot of years, you're not allowed to farm. And so we've moved away from that with freedom to farm in more recent years. And finally, my first vote on a farm bill just a few years ago was the one where I voted in concert with our colleagues, a bipartisan effort, to eliminate the farm subsidies and move towards the crop insurance program we're talking about. That establishes the floor on price and on risk for farmers without this direct payment thing, which so many people find unpopular. And I wasn't happy to be part of either, other than I was one of many of thousands of participants. And our farm, you know, has been there long before there was ever a program, and we intend to be there long after whatever the program might be. So, but what is extremely important, Ms. Denny mentioned, is that we have a short amount of time to pass the Farm Bill. Sadly, in the House, we were unable to get a single Democrat to vote for the Farm Bill, which has a lot of very important aspects to it. Much of it is USDA rural grants that help your local healthcare facilities, and many other aspects of rural that isn't just the farm part of the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill also, approximately 80% of the spending is what is known as a SNAP program, or better known as a food stamp program. I've supported every iteration of a Farm Bill that continued to fund that, because I know how important that is for rural and impoverished areas like we have. So let's keep moving forward. I hope we can pass that. I hope maybe you can talk to some of your folks you know back there, say we need to push forward and get some of our California reps and some of our Midwest reps to support this Farm Bill soon, because it means so much to so many, and especially in rural America. Thank you.
Okay,
Want me to make one up?
these next questions are about women's rights and abortion. One of them is, what do you think of the Violence Against Women's Act? Should it be reauthorized? Do you support a woman's right to choose? And at the last question, so those are about women's rights, but the last is, you both are people of faith, and how does your faith affect your policy views and your political philosophy?
That's about 5 questions in 2 minutes there. So why don't? Okay, the VAWA Act. Let's start with that one.
Planned
okay?
Parenthood and
the Violence Against Women Act. We're about to have a vote pretty soon on reauthorizing that again for another cycle, and this bill has some of the issues taken out that were problematic in the last bill that were going to make it have constitutional problems. We saw in 1996 elements of the VAWA Act were thrown out in court, and I don't want to pass legislation that is going to be found unconstitutional and thrown out. So I totally support what the concept is here, and the bill we're going to do in 2018, from my examination of it, is a really good bill, and it's supportable, and I think will pass fairly quickly once we have that on the docket. So that is indeed a good measure, because, you know, we're here, especially as men, to protect our partners, and we need to have the legislation to do that. And so I think this legislation will be good quality legislation, and I hope we can pass it soon. What was the next round on that?
Parenthood, and
Okay,
then last, your faith, how it affects your
I
policy.
don't support funding of Planned Parenthood, and you know why that means it's important to you? You don't even have one of those facilities near you. Instead, if the money was channeled towards are rural health clinics that provide options for everybody, not just that narrow issue, then that's good for all of us to have additional funding go towards the rural health clinics that need more. We've had some good success, again, with USDA and some of our other legislation that we passed that has helped rural America. So that said, I think if we go in the direction of giving more options locally and funding it that way, we'll all be much better off. Lastly, I'm sorry.
Your faith and how it affects your.
Well, I'm a proud Christian. I don't like to use the word proud, but more so is that I don't mind acknowledging it. I think Jesus is my Savior. I walk with God as much as possible, as much as He'll have me. But forgiveness is indeed a key component to being a Christian. And so that's how I try to conduct myself in my civility with people, to try and be the best example. I have my flaws and I have my mess ups, but that said, that's where my heart truly lies.
I'm going to roll through these pretty quickly because it's a lot. I support the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. I support funding Planned Parenthood. Our centers in Redding and in Chico, besides performing safe and legal abortion, are such important women's health service centers. Folks, I could have died if I hadn't have gotten a preventative checkup, right? And these Planned Parenthood centers aren't just helping women decide whether or not to have babies and their birth control strategies. They're doing preventative health care that is saving people's lives, including mine, right? They're so, so important. I fully support a woman's right to choose. And from my faith tradition, I'm an Episcopalian, and at that national stance, we recognize abortion as a tragedy. But we also recognize that we need to be investing in sex education. We need to be investing in birth control to make sure we have less unwanted pregnancies. And since Roe v. Wade, we've had a lot less unwanted pregnancies and abortions. Folks, my faith is the reason that I'm standing in front of you today. It informs everything that I do. It informs my belief that we're all equal. But more importantly than that, folks, it informs my belief that me as a Christian, I have to work to protecting the most vulnerable among us, the marginalized, the strangers, the orphan, the widow. That's what Jesus taught when he was on this earth, and that's what I believe. It won't influence my policy-making decisions. My human rights framework will influence my policy-making decisions. My ability to look at issues from different angles and pick the solution that best fits the most people in the district will be how I legislate. But I can't stand up here in front of you and say that I wouldn't be here if I didn't have faith, because my faith gives me hope for a better world and reminds me that love will always win the day. And does anyone have a Kleenex, for crying out loud? You got me talking about Jesus up here.
You can laugh. Okay. So these are rural issues that we have in our rural communities, and throughout the one is about the legalization of marijuana or cannabis in California, and your feelings on that of medical and commercial. And then the next one is about the opioid crisis and the addiction issues that we have in our rural counties and throughout the nation. So, marijuana and opioids.
Cannabis and opioids, got it. So legalized cannabis is the law of the land in our state. It's really important to me that as we're in the early phases of this, we're rolling this out in a regulated manner to keep people safe. Right? It's a public safety issue. It's a making sure that we're keeping cannabis out of the recreational cannabis out of the hands of minors. But it's also kind of ironic to me that it's on the schedule. It's a Schedule 1 narcotic because one of the requirements for that means that it doesn't have any medical benefit, but yet the US government has 6 patents out for medical benefit of cannabis. So I think it needs to be deschedulized. The criminalization of this has failed. But we need to be very careful when we're rolling it out. And I do believe that the counties and the cities should get to retain that control of how they roll that out in their counties. Man, in terms of the opioid epidemic, I was in Modoc County a while ago, and I was meeting with the undersheriff, and he told me that most of the beds in his 44-bed jail were full of people that needed treatment for addiction issues and mental health issues, and that shouldn't be in his jail. Right? Medicaid is such an important part of treating addiction and mental health issues, and yet we have a representative who keeps voting to decrease that, right? It's one part of the solution. But for me, the other part of the solution is investing in preventative care and treatment. In the same county, I talked to the superintendent of schools who told me they had little kiddos coming into TK who were already verbally, physically, and sexually abused from addicted parents. And they needed to hire caseworkers and psychologists to help make sure we get early intervention on those kids so we can help them become productive members of our society. And we need to make sure that they have the flexible funding that they don't always get to do that.
You know, what we haven't talked about much here has been crime, rural crime, statewide crime, and so much of that is involved in the drug culture. When Sacramento keeps passing legislation to make it easier on criminals, we have a situation now where people know they can walk into a store with a calculator and take $900+ worth of stuff and walk right out the door, and they're not going to get prosecuted even if they get caught to any extent. That's what the waiver has been. And now with Jerry Brown pardoning murderers, letting people out of prison in a rate that is unprecedented, we're really going to feel it in rural California and all across the state. So to add to that, the legalization of marijuana, and I'll talk about some of the positives that can come from it, we're really throwing our law enforcement into a tizzy with that. The marijuana, this isn't your old hippie uncle's marijuana. This is stuff is much more intense than what it was 40 years ago. The way they refined it, the amount of active ingredient in that, it's dangerous. People that do tours in marijuana traveling through Colorado and pick up some brownies or whatever it is in a store, they sometimes are thrown into very, very unhealthy, dangerous situations with that. And if you think Colorado's a model for that, well, you need to look again. I'd hate to see that foisted upon California and our towns, where bringing it into our towns just make it look more legal. Meanwhile, all the backdoor stuff is still happening with the illegal trade of it. Now, if there's medical value to the marijuana product, then let's use that, let's refine that into something that has a real prescription by a real doctor with real results, something that can be measured. Because yes, there is positive effects for people that are dealing in pain, dealing with chemotherapy, things like that, that can be done. But we need to have it on a basis like any other controlled drug. Otherwise, you've got the Wild West, growing it next to your neighbors and all this stuff going on. It is not helpful for us. The opioids, you've got some amazing results. We met with some folks up here with your health folks and law enforcement on stopping the opioid. You've gone from so many deaths from it up here to 0 last year and just 1 this year from multiple. So much is being done. We're making progress on opioids, and let's keep it up.
There's 2 questions. One's about expanding rural broadband and efforts to do that. And then the other one is about security of our elections and how to keep them secure.
What's that?
You know, the hacking. One question is, my company receives hack attempts almost daily about, you know, they can hack into our banking, they can hack into our elections. What are we going to do about that? And the expand rural broadband. It's about computers and things like that.
Okay. You know, what's that old song? One of these is not like the other, but no, we'll work on it. So 1 minute on each, I'll try. So rural broadband, we're making good headway on that. Portola, my understanding, has a really good system here set up by your local utility. You got, you know, what was it, the CBs used to say, like wall-to-wall power there on it. So that's good, but we want to continue. In Congress, we have expanded funding and I had legislation that made it into a larger bill to knock down the barriers of moving rural broadband infrastructure through rural areas, especially federal lands. That a lot of times they would say, well, we need to study it, we need a NEPA, we need this, that. on already existing pathways of utilities. This needs to be streamlined because we want rural areas like this and like my home in Butte County, wherever, to have a chance to be more competitive with bringing jobs here, with having the ability to hook up on high-speed internet to be able to deal with those other areas that already have that. You have telemedicine, which really helps your clinics and local hospitals, I know, that struggle to stay open, to be able to talk directly with other areas that can examine those MRI exams and x-rays that maybe they don't have the local expertise until we finally get more doctors and more expertise here. So that's the broadband side, and on the other side, okay, I sat at, I'll go back to the state legislature a little bit. I sat on the elections committee there, and the legislation that came through, unfortunately by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, kept doing things to make elections less secure. Same-day registration just makes it that much harder to have elections secure. Why don't we have voter ID at the polls, like you have ID for just about everything else that's important in our life, to get on an airplane, to buy a lot of different items, to have, heck, the Democrat convention requires ID to get there, right? So why don't we have ID for something so important as the sacred process of voting? That would go in a long ways towards securing our elections. But we need to continue to advance technology that secures our elections so we can't be hacked. Those other countries, they're always going to be trying to do it. It wasn't just 2016. They're always going to try to interfere with our elections. So going back to paper ballots would be very helpful instead of having hackable computers.
All right, so first, rural broadband. Folks, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's of a generation older than me, and he said, Audrey, why do we even need rural broadband? My kid's on their phone enough as it is. And I was like, Jonathan, come on. Rural broadband is so much more than my generation wanting to be on our phones, right? It's economic opportunity, it's telemedicine, it's making sure kids in our schools in these rural areas can get connected to the resources that they need. It's the ability of the younger generation to be mobile with their jobs and have jobs in these rural areas. It's so, so important. It's not going to happen through federal grant funding alone, right? Because it's not affordable, it's not profitable for AT&T and Comcast to provide every single person rural internet. It's easier in the big city where they get more money, but out here, we need to hold them accountable for leveraging their existing infrastructure and for bringing fiber optics out to all of our homes, right? It's so, so important. The Russia interference in our election. Folks, that was a direct attack on our democracy. And nothing scares me more than attacks on our democratic institutions. Leadership in the House has abdicated their constitutional responsibility to provide oversight to the executive branch and to investigate any number of issues, but primarily at the top of my mind is the Russian hacking in our elections. It has to be, in these next 50 days leading up to the midterms, it has to be a #1 priority of our Congress to make sure that we are not vulnerable to more foreign attacks on our elections.
Next is, we're going to move into public lands and water.
We have to do those both in 1 minute.
Okay, I'll break it up. Okay.
We could do water for like 15
Let's do
minutes.
water first. Okay. Do you support raising Shasta Dam and building additional dams to bring water to farmers and residents? And what's your position on dismantling of the aging Klamath dams? Let's see. Those are just talking about our water, restoring our watershed. There was a question about that. Would you support federal funds to restore the Feather River watershed? Okay, and those are just on water. Oh, well, water drinking in Flint. Well, that's a little different one. Let's just keep it about
All right,
public.
one of my staff is from Michigan. They better not have put that in there. All right. So raising the Shasta Dam was the first one? Yeah. Yeah, so I've said this once, I'll say it again. If raising the Shasta Dam would make it rain more, I would be all for it. The 18.5-foot raise that they're projecting will increase the capacity, the reservoir capacity, by 600,000 acre feet. But that's different than water yield, right? That's different than the actual water deliveries that we'll get. And the Bureau of Reclamation, in their 2015 feasibility report, said that it'll give us 51,000 more acre feet. 51,000 and cost $1 billion. Folks, to put that in perspective, that's 0.7% of the water delivery from the Central Valley Project. And in the summer of 2015, urban water users in our state they conserved 8 times that much water. It's a colossal waste of taxpayer dollars. It violates state law with the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, and it will submerge some really important Winnemem Win 2 tribal cultural heritage sites. I would like to see us invest in off-stream storage in Sites Reservoir. There's no perfect place to put new water storage, but folks, we need it. And it'll build flexibility into our water system as we're looking down the pipe at climate change. But even more important than that, we need to be looking at watershed restorations. We need to be looking at our forestry practices that'll help us restore our watersheds, help us recharge our groundwater. We need to be looking at recycling, like they're doing at the northern part of the San Joaquin Valley, recycling urban water and getting it to farmers. We need to be looking at desalination. There's a bunch of different pieces to this water puzzle. I think I missed one of the questions. What was it? Climate? Oh, the Klamath dams. Those are coming out anyway. The company that owns them doesn't want to pay to retrofit them, to upgrade them. So that's kind of a moot point at this point. Was that it? Did it? Okay.
I think removing the Klamath dams is a terrible idea. It provides green, renewable hydroelectric power for 70,000 families. And so as the state of California has now moved towards a 100% renewable mandate in not that many years from now, where's this power going to come from? Are we going to import it all? Are we going to make our problem in some other state, some other place? I think that's kind of arrogant that we export all of our problems. We cut trees somewhere else. We expect other people to provide everything for us and not produce it here. So the Klamath Dam is a flawed, there really isn't the science behind that has been fully vetted. Klamath Lake is a very warm lake, and the whole system there does not support, it basically comes down to the fish. Warm water in that system from a warm lake full of phosphates is not going to support that river well. The dams actually provide a cooling effect by storing some amount of water before it runs through the hydro plants. And then what happens that they're glossing over? I've talked to senators, I've talked to others. What happens when you release the 20 million cubic yards of silt that is sitting behind those 4 dams into that system all the way to the ocean? Anytime you get silt in a system like that, the fish struggle, they basically can't breathe. And if you've ever seen a construction project along a highway or somewhere, along about October, they start putting the rice straw, which I shouldn't complain about, but all that out there to try and keep erosion because it'll erode into a ditch, which might get into a river. So don't ever talk to me about erosion again if you're going to allow 20 million cubic yards of erosion to happen there. So that's the Klamath. We absolutely need to build Sites Reservoir because in a growing state that has basically got a water system designed for about 20 million, we have a population of about 40 million. Build Sites Reservoir. On the Shasta Dam raise, it's moving forward. They've committed part of the money. They're taking core samples right now on that. So what I'm ensuring is that the people around the lake, the resorts, the marinas, the landowners, the people that live around and enjoy that will have the opportunity to build once again and have the resorts and marinas that are so important to that local economy and the right they should have anyway instead of having just the Forest Service take over the whole shoreline, etc.
Now we're going to talk about the forests. Our forests are burning. What will you do in Congress to reduce the threat of wildfire and increase forest health and productivity? Also, our roads have been closed in our forest.
Well, how about I just do 2 minutes
okay,
on that? Is that okay?
Yeah,
all right. I mean, no, it's okay. You're okay, Lori. I mean, I can get carried away on forestry, okay? So I appreciate that. Now, we've had a template for this in the past. You know, Senator Feinstein and my predecessor, Congressman Herter, right here in Plumas County, just down the road, the Quincy Library Group, tried to make a model, tried to make a pattern for having a little more activity in the forest as far as thinning and the long-term sustainability. When forests, depending on tree type, terrain type, and all that, are healthy at 50 to 100 trees per acre, but we have an inventory of anywhere 200, 300, 500, in some extreme cases, 1,000 trees per acre, we have a situation that's kind of creating its own crisis, even in drier years, creating its own drought. Weakened trees are then susceptible to insects because they're not making the sap that is what the trees use to ward off insects. Dead trees, we have over 130 million dead trees in California because we've had a hands-off policy for the last 40 years due to a handful in the environmental movement, pretty much throwing a lawsuit every time someone's trying to do responsible practices. This isn't about cutting every tree from here to Oregon. It hasn't been for many years. You talk to the people that are in the industry, they have 100-year plans for the forest lands they own. And it doesn't involve cutting every tree. It means cutting an area and planting back. And then you go to a different zone. When this one's grown up 100 years, you come back. So it's really a sensible policy. So would you rather watch it burn and do much more to contribute to carbon, to the pollutants that are getting in the air than anything that we're trying to do by putting people in a high-speed train or kicking you out of your already small car? Let's go with a sensible policy of managing these forests under a prescription, and we also have to also do it on the federal land involved because U.S. Forest Service has been very slow. This isn't about the firefighters. They're busting their tails and risking their lives to put the fires out. This is about the bureaucracy at Washington that's been stopping that. Thankfully, was Secretary Perdue and him coming out here recently and seeing the devastation of the fires just down the road. We're going to be able to change that policy to something a lot more productive and safer for the habitat, the forest, and everybody.
So a lot of you who saw me at the Sierraville Forum earlier this year remembered my me saying something like, well, hell, I'm a Valley Ag girl and I don't know anything about forestry. I have a lot to learn. But luckily in the past 9 months, I have been working with amazing experts, some of whom are in this room, to get me up to speed on our forestry issues. I think the congressman mentioned a couple of the issues, but we have to restore our forests to health. Right now, our forests are they have the potential to be the center of economic development, of jobs, of valuable productive timber, of restoring our watersheds, or they have the potential to kill us. And I don't need to tell anyone in this room that, right? Of the forest land that covers 1/3 of our state, 57% of it is managed by the federal government. What we don't need federal mandates coming down telling us how to do it. I saw Jason Christian walk in the room here earlier. He's was with the Quincy Library Group that the congressman mentioned, but now they're starting a new Healthy Forest and Watershed. There he is, Healthy Forest and Watershed Council, because what they need to do to restore your forests here look a lot different than up with the Crook tribe in the Klamath Basin, right? They need different integrated natural resource plans to make it happen. But we have to make it happen more quickly than it is right now. U.S. Forest Service said that they're going to amp up their 250,000 acres a year treatment to 500,000. But we have 6 million acres just in the Sierra Nevada that desperately need to be treated. We have to amp up the pace and the scale of collaboration, and we do that by creating master stewardship agreements like Tuolumne County did with the U.S. Forest Service and the state government. It only took them 3 months to bring all the stakeholders together to make that plan. And we need that in every single forested county that we have. I got another one. How many more do we got? That's like 10 minutes out, right?
So this one's about accessing our forest, and we've had travel management plan that closed down many roads to OHVs, and now we're having over snow vehicles like snowmobiles are being restricted to use the forest. What is your position on restricting access to public lands in our national forests?
So our public lands are one of my favorite parts about living in California's 1st District. I mean, I think all of us living in this room, if we live out here, we have an appreciation for nature, right? We love living out here because it's beautiful and because of our public lands. I believe that we need to be managing our public lands for multiple benefits. I believe we need to be managing them for timber production. We need to be managing them for ecosystem services. We need to be managing them for carbon sequestration, for recreational benefits, for restoring our watershed, to protecting our endangered species. We need to be managing them for multiple benefits. With that management comes a lot of complex road questions that honestly I don't know a lot about, the road issues that you're facing up here in Plumas County. And so I would love whoever wrote that question to come find me afterwards and teach me more about your struggle with that. I think that's really important. But I do know, as your Congresswoman, I really, really value public lands, and I will work hard to protect them and make sure that we're managing them for multiple benefits. Now it's to you. Yep, you got it.
You didn't use all your time.
You know, so I can have it.
All right. Oh, I can have your extra time? Just kidding. No, that doesn't work that way. All right. Well, you know, the issue of public lands is, the key word is public. They're owned by everybody, right? Should be enjoyed by everybody. Now, we have conservation, we have preservation, we also have that enjoyment. And so every time I hear another thing about a travel management plan by one of the several forest units we have in the district, I also hear a lot of complaints from people that would like to be out there, whether it is snowmobiling in the winter on 10 feet of snow, or hunting, hiking, or off-roading where appropriate. You know, we're not talking about off-road vehicles everywhere. Horseback riding, all those things that people going out, being amongst the trees, that makes them feel good and enjoying those lands that we all own. Travel management plans, by and large, at least until recently, and we still have, you know, some folks that want to resist having access. Some of these forest units think that belong to the Forest Service and not the people. We need to have it where it's open to the people, and that means a lot of things positively, with recreation, with the ability to also have better management. Every time another road gets taken out or is allowed to lapse into non-repair, we have less tools for foresters to go out there and assess how the forest is doing, to count the dead trees or do something about the dead trees. If firefighter access is needed out there, that access is gone. Why does it take a year in a gigantic NEPA study to change a culvert on an existing road, an existing culvert? The bureaucracy is killing that, and it's killing local people's options, and it's killing economies. We had a bike race down, I believe it was in Sierra County, shut down because somebody found a species one time that they were going to use that as keeping people out from enjoying the land. And this is something people come from many miles around. Hundreds of people come in and make one of the small towns have that vibrant economy for a few days, and that's taken away by this onerous feeling the federal government not only owns the land but has a stranglehold on that. It's all of ours.
We're getting close to the end, but I'm going to get a few more questions in. Congress passed a large tax cut while increasing the military budget, leaving less money for social services, education grants, low-income assistance, and senior services, etc. Please comment on whether you will support such tax cuts and increase military spending, and why.
I was glad to support the tax cut bill because that has put more dollars back into your pockets that you earned to begin with. It keeps, let me rephrase that. It keeps the dollars in your pockets that you earned, because not all the money belongs to the federal government. You earned it first by the sweat of your brow, by your ideas, your innovation. It didn't come from the government saying, well, we're going to let you have this amount. So that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act has indeed done just what it says. More jobs. Our unemployment has dropped to historic lows since the 60s. The gross domestic product is 4.2%. I mean, these are the facts, not reported by just some party, and some feel it's going to be higher than 4.2 in the next report. That's an amazing amount of new economy because of incentives of putting the dollars back in your pocket. People are getting raises. You know, a lot of families are seeing approximately $2,000 more in their income. middle-income America has seen the highest rate of income since before the economic downturn of 2008. So we went through that drop, and now we're back above that level again, and middle-income America is doing better. And so why not continue the pattern of success by letting you have more choices, investment by business back in the United States, not overseas, because they have a little more confidence that investing here is going to be rewarded instead of taken away. So it is large businesses and medium businesses and small businesses that kickstart the ability for more jobs and more employment. 2 million people have rolled off the food stamp program, not because somebody kicked them off, as is going to be heard out there by, you know, election season or whatever, but because they chose to, because they had a job that was more rewarding for them. That's success in America. We ought to be celebrating that. Now, has that reached the far reaches of every part of the country? No. That's why we have to continue, and we are in California. Every time you pass something in Washington, they pass something in Sacramento to oppose that, such as sanctuary state, sanctuary city, all that sort of thing, that is going backwards. The amount of crime, but let's work off the success that we're having and have that be sure to come to our local economy and overcome the regs that are hurting it.
The middle class is not doing better. My entire life, I have been solidly middle class. I have taught your kids. While I was teaching your kids, I was bartending at your bars. The middle class is not doing better. Over the past 50 years, minimum wage has effectively decreased by 1/3, and in that same time, corporations have increased their profit by 500%. Folks, the tax bill that went through at the end of last December, that was the final straw. And that was the moment that I decided to enter this race, because our congressman was complicit in that. Sure, you might have a couple extra bucks. You might even have 2,000 extra bucks in your pocket. But 86% of that benefits went to the richest among us and went to corporations. They threw us a bone to keep us quiet. Well, they took the entire cow. Folks, we all own, let me finish. I only have 2 minutes. We all own that $1.5 trillion debt. Your kids own that. Your grandkids own that. We own that debt. We are going to have to fight like hell to make sure that they don't cut our social services after that. We need to restore fairness to our tax code. We need to end Wall Street-oriented tax policy, and we need to do it yesterday. Give me another question.
We're winding down the hour. It's almost 8:30, but there's a lot of questions of having more forums. Many people in this room tonight have traveled from across the district to attend this forum. They want more forums. Will you come to Nevada County? It's all about having more forums. They just love them.
Well, I'm having a great time. I'm having a lovely time, and anytime, any place that the congressman would be willing to have another forum with me, I will cancel any event on my schedule to show up anywhere you'd want me to be. So yes, I'm all in.
All right. Well, it goes to show, too, that I've always been one to participate in forums, and where many of my colleagues do not. Many are having 0. I know some that are having 1. And so we do have a congressional schedule to keep. I know you send me back there. Well, maybe some of you aren't sending me there, but you got me anyway. To do the job that is required in Congress. We have a farm bill coming up. We have funding the government through another fiscal year or whatever it's going to end up being. And we have a lot of other issues, as the Senate has sitting on about 600 of our bills over there. By the way, I was going to mention a while ago on forestry, please call your senators and have them help us pass the Resilient Forest Act, okay? Senator Feinstein gets it, okay? She's been there. She's got a tough battle right now, too. But we need help in the Senate on passing the legislation that the House dutifully does. And so whether we have more forums, I'm not sure, because the congressional schedule is going to get awfully compacted or impacted in the upcoming days. But I enjoy doing them, and if we get a window, we get an opening to do it here in the next time, I will consider that, because I enjoy the time with Ms. Denny as well. So this is good. I've also enjoyed doing town halls. Now, they've been a little tough in recent times, but, you know, I didn't get into this thinking it was going to be always easy, but, you know, The civility thing we talked about a little while ago. Now, we got great civility here tonight. Sometimes it's hard to stop. You know, it just comes out of you. But I get that. It's all of us. But as we can maintain the civility, unlike what we're seeing going on with these protests going on in the country where they're doing vandalism and all that stuff, this is what's going to bring us together as a people, because as things get tough in a dangerous world, I'm glad we have a stronger defense. I'm glad we have what's available, more available to keep our men and women in service by the funding needed to have armor and everything they need. We need, you know, when you have airplanes and helicopters falling out of the sky, we're doing something wrong here. So all these things together make us work together, and the civility, we need to do that. So I look forward to that as we move along.
We're at our closing statements, and Audrey's going to give hers, and then Doug will give his, and then I will wrap it up.
All right. Oh, yeah, I'm running out of water. Whew, it's hot up here. Friends, we feel forgotten up here sometimes, and we feel left behind up here sometimes because we have been. But we don't have to be. This November, we have a big choice to make. Will we elect a representative that is accountable to corporations and special interests? Or will we elect a representative who says no to that? I encourage everyone here to go to the FEC reports and pull down our filings and read them for yourselves. Don't trust me, look it up. Folks, we've got a country, we've got a question, we've got a decision to make about the kind of district we want to be, right? The kind of neighbors, the kind of friends we want to be. Are we going to show up for our neighbors in our district by protecting the most vulnerable, by protecting our seniors, by investing in our veterans, by investing in our education system and making sure we all have access to health care? And folks, we have a question. We have a decision about what kind of America that we want to be, right? Are we going to resign ourselves to polarization and to fear and to gridlock? Or are we going to lean in to the highest aspiration of our American ideals and try to create a more perfect union with liberty and with justice for all?
Let's let Doug do his last statement.
All right. Thank you. Well, first, again, I'm honored to serve you in the 1st District, and to walk the halls of Washington, D.C. is a feeling, you can't really describe it, being in this position for you here. We don't all agree on everything, obviously, but I always serve with the spirit that what is good for the district, what is good for the people that play by the rules, work hard, it's going to be good for everybody. Because when we're all in a prosperous situation, that enables us to help our neighbor, to help those in need, instead of it coming from a centralized government telling you how to do it at every step of the way and getting 50 cents on the dollar of actual value when you run that tax dollar back finally to a program here. When it comes from the heart, you get much better results. Charitable organizations like that. That said, we have these programs in place, and it's our job, it's my job as a steward of your tax dollars to make sure the dollars are spent as wisely and as well as possible. So when we pass this farm bill, which we will do, I hope it's a long-term one, not just a short-term thing, because the two sides do this. I mean, you see that it's going to be extremely helpful to rural America in this rural district. I want the choices for you and your children, your grandchildren, to remain here and prosper. Not have to go to a city somewhere and live in a stacked housing thing that someone has designed for you. You live here for a reason. I live where I do for a reason. My family, my wife, my 4 kids. It really comes down to those individual choices and individual liberties. And it can't come from a centralized government. Government's supposed to provide a few basic things: defense of our borders, defense of our nation, law enforcement, and choices in education that you want. Beyond that, Let's see how we can do that working with each other. We're going to continue to support the programs that help people, but we also have the right and obligation to ask, can we make them run better? Because every dollar we take from you in taxes as a government, whether it's the federal, the state, the local, is a dollar you had to earn. You paid income taxes, you might have paid property tax, so if you're using tools and equipment, and anything you purchase with that, you paid a sales tax on. And then they foist more taxes on your cars and your fuel. So are they being efficient with your dollars? Can you honestly say that? I ask that question all the time because I'm one of the stewards of that. So as far as me being accountable to anybody besides you or my Lord, that's it. Corporate America is a lot of times spineless and soulless. It's you, the people, that have the soul, that have the drive, that have what it takes for keeping America strong, and it's an honor to serve you. I hope to do that again for 2 more years. Thank you, and God bless you all for being here.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate how you conducted yourself. I was a little bit worried because it was a lot of people, but I'm sure the candidates will be here and you can talk to them and grab some of their signs. And thank you all for coming and join the League of Women Voters.